Hi there, Sandy here. Welcome to another jewelry making video at keepsakecrafts.net. Today is part 2 in learning how to use some of the tools you might already have from other crafts to make this toggle clasp and these metal charms for your jewelry. So if you haven't seen part 1, in that I showed you how to use scrapbooking dies and embossing folders to make these flower charms and also make this piece, which will be part of a toggle clasp. So the next thing you'll want to do once you have your pieces nicely filed so that there's no sharp edges, you'll want to polish them up and remove all the darkening that came from using the torch. And you can use any kind of polish, but I highly recommend this stuff, Penny Bright. It is fantastic. It works so quickly. You don't need much, and in just a few moments, the piece is clean. And then just rinse it off under some water and dry it. And now I've gone ahead and used my screw punch to punch holes in the charms, and I'm also going to punch a hole in my toggle, and I just need one. And if you want to learn more about using the screw punch, you can go to the video. There's a link in the upper right on how to use it. I did a whole Friday Findings video. So there's this part of my toggle clasp. Now the copper is a little bit soft for my comfort for making a piece of jewelry, so I want to harden it, and I also want to shape it a little. So what I have here is a bracelet form that I just made out of polymer clay and baked. Just some scrap clay, and then I have a rawhide mallet, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of a curve so it'll fit nicely on the wrist. And not only will this curve it, but it will harden it as well. See, already it's a lot more rigid. And the thing about using the rawhide mallet is it's not going to wreck any of my texture. It's just going to shape it and harden it. Oh, that's much better already. And then these pieces, it wouldn't hurt for them to have a little bit of a curve and to be a little bit harder. And I mentioned earlier in the previous video that you want to file these edges. They still feel a little bit sharp, and you can take the rest of that down just with the application of some steel wool, and that really buffs them and smooths them nicely. So after you've made sure that your metal pieces have no rough edges, you can go ahead and proceed to make your jewelry, but I wanted to add a bit of a patina to the copper, because that's one wonderful thing about it, is it gets these great colors. And what I use to do that is Swelligant patina. Now I've done a Friday Findings video on the Swelligant patinas, and you often see these used on polymer clay or on paper crafts, and in that case what you would have to do is paint your project with the copper paint first and then add the patina on top of it. But since our pieces are already copper, we can just go ahead and add this stuff. And I will put it in just like a little disposable plastic cup. Make sure the pieces are good and covered, and then take them out because they need exposure to air for the patina to happen. So you can't just let them soak in it. Now when you do this stuff with the paints, usually what you do is you put on a coat of paint, let it dry, then you put a coat of paint on, leave it wet, and put the patina on, and it will happen like within 10-15 minutes. Since this is already copper and obviously not wet, it takes a little bit longer. I just left these overnight. And then you can see I've already done some sanding on these pieces, and I'm using a sanding block. That's actually yet another paper crafting product, but I'm using something that's flat so that I just take the patina off the high points, because I want to leave it in the recesses of that texture that I made. And so you can see on this one, and you can take off as much or as little as you like. You could certainly take off a lot more than this. But see, that starts to reveal the texture that we embossed in the metal. Now if you want, you can let this age naturally, but this shiny bright copper isn't really the look I was going for. So the next thing I'm going to do is add a liver of sulfur patina. And if you want to learn more about that, I've also done a Friday Findings video on using liver of sulfur. So now here are my pieces after being in a liver of sulfur solution for just a few minutes, maybe 10-15 minutes. It just darkened them up a bit. And these ones I've already polished a little bit just with a Pro Polish pad. And so this one I have left to do. And I'm just getting some of it. I'm just hitting some of the high points. And yes, some of the patina is going to flake off. But what I like about doing this is now I have a whole variety of shades on here. I've got dark green, light greens, I've got darkened copper, bright copper, and it just makes a very interesting piece. And now you can see some of that finish is flaking off, and we certainly don't want that to happen while you're wearing the piece of jewelry, so I'm going to seal it, and I've already done that with these three, just with some Renaissance wax. This stuff is actually used in museums to preserve things, and you just take a little bit and rub it on, and just like when if you ever waxed a floor, you put it on, and then let it. This one says that it dries right away hard, but I've found I get better results if I just let it sit for a minute or so. Let the wax harden. And then I'll just come back with a paper towel and buff it. And I don't know if you can see the difference. You just get a nice sheen. Some of that excess patina and junk comes off. That's fine. And now our pieces are nearly ready to make into jewelry. If you like this video, I hope that you'll give it a thumbs up and share and subscribe if you want to see more like it. I upload new tutorials on Tuesdays and Fridays. So now that we have our toggle piece finished, it's time to make a toggle bar. And since this is going to be the focal of our piece of jewelry and not just a functional closure, let's make something kind of cool. I'm going to show you how to make a tornado toggle. So you'll need a piece of heavy gauge copper wire. This is 16 gauge. You could use 14. That would be nice and heavy. And what I did was I measured the widest part of my toggle, which is about 7/8 of an inch. And then I added about 5/8 of an inch for a coil on the end. So that's 1.5 inches. Double that to 3 inches, and then added some more room for the loop that goes in the middle. And I cut a 4-inch piece just to be safe and want to be sure that my toggle's plenty long enough. I'm going to make a good size loop here. I'm going to put these bail making pliers right in the middle, and then one end goes to one side and the other end goes to the other until they're in a straight line again. Take some nylon jaw pliers and give that a good squeeze. Now I'm using these pliers. These are 2-in-1. They're one jaw is like round nose pliers and the other side is flat. And what's nice is that when you're making things like coils and spirals, the flat part isn't going to mar the wire, whereas if you were gripping it with a round part, that can create a dimple. You can also use flat nose pliers once you get it, that first loop. Go ahead and grab it and bend it. I'll see that's just about right. I'm not really thrilled with this, but that shape, because of the tornado part we're going to add, really isn't going to show. So I'll move on and show you the next steps. You'll need a bench block and a chasing hammer. And I have this on a sandbag, which helps dampen the sound a bit. And then I'm just going to place the part from the loop in on the block and hammer. This strengthens it, hardens it, makes sure it's not going to go anywhere. And now for the tornado part. We're going to use some beads. And I just have an assortment of little beads here. I have some seed beads, some little 3mm copper beads with corrugations, some little 3mm Swarovski crystal rounds, and topaz. But before we do the beading, we need some 24 gauge wire. And here I have about 30 inches, 2.5 feet of this wire. So I'm just going to find the center, and we're going to make a little tornado on our toggle. And I'm going to put the center of this wire right at the center of the toggle, And then I'll just work with half of the wire at a time. And I want to go over the center a couple times just to fill in that space so it's not bare. And then this is just very free-form wire wrapping. You just, we're not trying to make perfect coils here. We're just making, kind of a sculpture. It's interesting, it's textured. Wrap all the way down to the loop, wrap over, crisscross, and then you can add some beads. And we want to put the beads on top. There's no point in having them underneath. They'll be bulky and be in the way, and you won't be able to see them. So then you just start picking up some beads, slide it down to your toggle, and then use your fingers to hold it in place on top, and do a couple wraps. And work your way back to the center. I want to throw on one of these little Swarovskis because I love them. And like I said, don't use beads that are too big. They'll just be bulky and in the way and not really in proportion with what you're doing. I would say definitely no more than 4 millimeter. And then once you get to the end of your wire, just find a place that you can tuck it in. Use your chain nose pliers. I like to give it a bit of a tug so I know it's nice and secure. And tuck it in, and if you need to, you can trim off some of the excess. We just don't want that catching on somebody's clothes or skin or hair. And then you can continue with your other piece. Again, go down to the loop in a free-form manner, and then come back with some beads. So many of you have told me you have been encouraged and inspired by these videos, and that really is my goal. That is what I want to do. So if you've benefited, I'd love it if you'd consider becoming a patron. You can support these tutorials with $1 a month or whatever you can afford. And at my Patreon page, I have special drawings several times a year that you can win pieces of my jewelry. I just sent out packages to some of my patrons who won necklaces and earrings and bracelets and even some of my polymer clay pieces. And I have other special things that I do throughout the year. Every week I try to put up a post just for patrons showing behind the scenes, what I'm doing, what I'm working on, maybe sneak peeks. Like I recently showed a sneak peek of a magazine article that I'm working on that won't be out till probably February. And apart from all that, you can feel good knowing that you're supporting the arts, Nevertheless, I'll be continuing to make these videos on my YouTube channel. It's just an opportunity for folks who are interested in helping out. Alright, so I'm going to finish up. I think that's the last bead. Couple more wraps. And isn't that just the greatest accent to that toggle? And now really, this is what the bracelet's all about. Interestingly, in this pattern, the beads are just supporting players. I picked out these beads. I'm just going to do a double strand of beads. I'll add my charms. I'll add some copper beads interspersed, and that'll be that. If you need a refresher on bead stringing basics, you can check out my Friday Findings video. So here's the bracelet all put together. The stringing wire, the center of it is here going through this one wire protector, and then down here each end has its own wire protector to make the 2 strands. I also added some of these smaller beads at the ends because the wires are too close together for these wider beads. And then just attach the charms with jump rings. And the only other thing that I will do to finish this bracelet is I will put this toggle in some liver of sulfur to darken it up, and then I'll polish up the high points. And that's what you see in the final shot. All of those videos that I mentioned in the series, as well as links to my blog post with a supply list, will be in the description box. Also, there's a link up here in the upper right. You click on the little eye, and that'll bring you to a card where you can go to my blog post. So if you're interested in those supplies, that's where it will be. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my Patreon page if you're interested. So here's another look at the project we made. I hope you enjoyed it. Happy creating. Bye-bye.